Let's get started. Welcome to BioVit Live, anyone that has joined. Today's webinar is called and all about children's nutrition and children's food products. I'm Ema, I'm a registered nutritionist and the head of nutrition at BioVit, and hosting these BioVit Live webinars, which are designed to have some really interesting discussions in the field of nutrition and the food industry. Today we're talking about the current state of children's nutrition in the UK, thinking about malnutrition in terms of overnutrition, but also that silent epidemic of undernutrition where children aren't getting enough of vital nutrients like fiber, vitamins, minerals. So I'm sure everyone is very aware of the shocking statistics on childhood obesity and that a large part this is a result of our food environment and food poverty and socioeconomic disparities. A stat that I wanted to share I saw recently from the Food Foundation that really stuck with me was that if the trends continue the way that they currently are, for children born in 2021, 22% will have overweight or obesity by the time they start school. And by the age of 65, only 18% will be a healthy weight, which is terrifying. Um, and this lack of sufficient nutrition, as we can see in early life, can have irreversible changes to development and impact chronic disease later in life. And that's called nutritional programming. And these early days also impact a child's relationship with food and their behavior around food. So there's so much going on. And we're going to be discussing all of this, but it won't all be doom and gloom because we've also got really, really exciting panel members who are doing really exciting things in the food industry to talk to us about what they're doing to try and change this direction that children's nutrition is going in. So we'll be taking advice from them in terms of how we can innovate better and do better for the future of children's health. So I will introduce everyone now, and then we'll get into some questions. So firstly, we've got Holly Pink. Holly has over 15 years experience in product development, with the past 8 years leading innovation at The Collective. The Collective create delicious and nutritious products that disrupt the dairy space for both adults and children. And the Collective Kids range is the fastest growing kids yogurt brand. And Holly believes that this is due to the team's focus on reducing sugar, ensuring balanced nutrition, and maintaining exceptional taste. Passionate foodie, Holly is very interested in evolving health and wellness trends. So welcome, Holly. Um, then we've got Lucy Upton, who is one of the UK's leading paediatric dietitians, bringing over 14 years of clinical experience working directly with children and families. With a decade of NHS service and ongoing independent practice, Lucy provides expert guidance on children's nutrition, working with families and consulting, also for leading food, parenting and supplement brands. Her expertise has also contributed to the publication of over 10 books on child nutrition. And Lucy's Instagram platform is widely known and offers accessible advice for families. So welcome, Lucy.
Welcome. Hi.
We've also got Lara, who's the co-founder of Lune and Wild, a brand dedicated to supporting busy parents and childcare providers in raising healthy children. Inspired by her early experience cooking for her family's bed and breakfast, Lara attended culinary school and later gained experience working in esteemed professional kitchens. During lockdown, she founded Lune and Wild, creating delicious, nutritious, ready-made, homemade meals for babies and young children. So thank you, Lara. And we have Laurie, who is the co-founder of Freddie's Farm Snacks, who make fruit and vegetable snacks for children. A mum of two, Laurie was motivated to create healthy, delicious options after struggling to find snacks that she felt good about giving her own children. Freddie's Farm Snacks use a patented process and want Aldi's next big thing in 2022. And Laurie's goal is to help feed the next generation with food that is nutritious and tasty. So thank you all. Hope those introductions were welcomed. And let's get into the discussion. So to kick us off, we thought we would do a little icebreaker and each answer the question, what does nutrition mean to you? So Laurie, if you want to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think nutrition to me and Freddie's Farm is more than just food. It's about nourishing the whole sort of child. And we want to empower children's relationship with good food. And I think remembering that food is supposed to be fun. Like, I really want parents to be able to say yes more often, knowing that food can be delicious and healthy. And yeah, like as a mum, I just want my kids and the nation's kids to have the best possible start in life. And that all stems from good nutrition.
Amazing. Thank you. Lara, do you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Myself and Lune and Wild, we talk about making sure that every mouthful counts, and nutrition is really the kind of value pillar that holds us true to all of our decision making, from our ingredient sourcing to the recipe creation and composition, to the way that we cook our meals. And we're all about kind of optimizing nutrition, ensuring that we're retaining it. And so by the time that a child is having one of our meals, they are getting, as I say, every mouthful is counting towards supporting their growth and development.
Lovely. Holly, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so at the collective, we really take this like very much a holistic approach to nutrition. So using, recognizable ingredients is really key, nothing artificial. And that's, we always use the term store cupboard ingredients has always been a big part of our brand. We were founded by chefs. So, it's, how a chef would make yogurt, for example. And similarly, we don't like look at each nutrient or ingredient or even process, for example, fortification in isolation, but we really try and keep the kind of looking at the nutritional profile as a whole. So, sugar is so relevant in for all of us, but also particularly for the yogurt category. So we absolutely keep sugar top of mind. We use all those targets that the government have out there as Public Health England have out there as a guide, but it's not gospel, because we actually find really innovative ways to reduce sugar, but it is all about great taste. Because I'm sure we'll come and talk to about it a lot today, but kids are really fussy, and we need help them get that good stuff in. Variety is key, and we think yogurt can, play such an important role in all of that. So yeah, that kind of holistic approach is really important for the collective.
Amazing. And last but not least, Lucy.
I do you know what I smiled when I got this question, because like nutrition to me is my everyday because it's my job. But I think that's the reality of the group that I work with is that nutrition is every day for parents, isn't it? It's feeding their children every day. It's something that they have to do, that they want to do right, and that they're in a sort of world at the moment more than ever. Bear in mind, I've been doing this nearly 15 years, where there is so much noise and so much information to cut through. I actually think nutrition gets really confusing for parents, and actually um being able to sort of bring together key messages and prioritizing health, because nutrition, particularly for young children, and the reason I went into pediatrics when I qualified was because I really liked the fact that nutrition in the younger generations essentially feeds futures. So it's all about that sort of foundational, not just what children eat, but how they eat and their relationship with food, which is something that is equally as important, I think, because it's not just about what we have, but we've got to have a good relationship with food and what we eat too. So, similarly to sort of what everybody's saying, it's that really sort of holistic view. And it's something that parents and families more than ever are desperate to get right, but are finding themselves in an environment and in a scenario where they're really struggling to pull apart that information, decision make. So yeah, it's a big one for me.
Yeah, it's a big topic. Hard to nail that down into a few sentences, but thank you guys. So let's move on to some questions and talk a bit more about the current state of children's nutrition. Lucy, can you talk to us a bit more about some of the biggest issues in terms of malnutrition, obesity, nutrient deficiencies?
Yeah, of course. You did a really beautiful summary actually
Yeah,
right at the beginning. So I
thanks.
was like, oh well, this is great. I'll just say what you said. But no, so I think nobody is shy of the fact that actually what we are seeing, what all this comes down to when I think about it is health span and a health crisis. And whilst we get very sort of caught up in figures that are important, like rates of, obesity, which we know if children are overweight or obese by the time they're sort of 3 to 6, they're almost certainly going to track through to adulthood. That matters because of health span. That matters because of then how are people growing up and how are our children growing up with, potentially increased risk of things like chronic disease, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular concerns, but also the other things that brings psychologically. So weight, stigma, and everything else that's tied in with, potentially being in a bigger body size, for example. I think the other thing is that we know that it isn't actually just about weight, and that, as you've sort of mentioned, we're seeing a huge crisis with food poverty and malnutrition. And I always say, children can be within an ideal or kind of target weight range, but actually still very much be malnourished, which I'm seeing on the front line all the time, and is sort of echoed in figures that we have around children in the UK not getting enough of key nutrients like vitamin D, of iron, of iodine. Fiber is really lacking. Around 90% of kids don't get enough fiber. And all of this matters because it affects health for our kids now, but it also affects the health for our children for their life. And as you mentioned, it's really disproportionately also affecting families of sort of lower socioeconomic status. And there is a food poverty like we have never seen it before. So it's a real mixing pot of concern that is sort of, again, stepping back and looking really laterally for families and for children, in terms of what we can do about that.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really good, really good overview, and definitely agree that there's so much in terms of how those early years impact the later years, and I also agree that the relationship with food is such an important factor in that.
Yeah.
So based on all of your experience that you have working with children and parents, you've talked a bit about the food poverty and stuff, but what sort of barriers are you noticing at the moment, maybe more so with parents in terms of feeding their kids healthier food and building healthier habits?
I mean, God, that's really multifaceted, isn't it? So, there's definitely an environment that's not conducive to supporting parents. But and I find it quite tricky actually sometimes, because I think we hear these big words and these big figures, and parents are repeatedly told what they're doing wrong, and they can often get, understandably, quite sort of put out when they hear these big news reports and they think that they've been making good decisions, for example, around their children's, food choices. And it's a huge societal issue that becomes an individual's issue. It becomes a family's issue, doesn't it, when there's so much
Hmm.
more to it? But there's definitely availability of options, in terms of being able to make a good choice, but also being able to make a choice that is well informed, because there is a lot to be said for how industry use halo marketing claims, and sort of, again, parents pick things up and say, Lucy, I thought I was making a good choice. There's also cost, and we cannot get away from that in terms of cost and availability of those foods to all families. I think, as I've sort of alluded to already, there's also that sort of missing education piece. So what I've seen across the course of my career are points of education that parents used to be able to receive, for example, about weaning in Sure Start centres, or, they used to be able to access at least some information, and that would hit all sort of groups across society, whereas lots of that has been pulled. And so accessibility to education, that mixed in with all of that conflicting messages that parents have to navigate, I think everyone is finding that quite difficult. And then you sort of, again, looking more broadly, you think about, how do we appropriately educate children, and at what stage do we do that? And looking at their, away from sort of family environments, other environments where food is offered. So nursery, preschool settings and schools, all probably have a lot of work to do to unify in terms of adherence to standards around food, compliance with that. And like everybody sort of mentioned, also having food that children will enjoy and will eat and will support, getting everything that they need. So, yeah, and there's also a huge change in parenting practices, right? So lots of people having to go back to work sooner, both parents back at work, lots and lots of many things.
Yeah, very multifaceted, not something that's easy to um, nail down into sort of one solution, but I imagine it must be quite rewarding working and seeing those changes happen when you're working with parents and kids.
Yeah, and I think, what I would probably echo along amongst a lot of clinicians and a lot of, children's dietitians and nutritionists, is that it's great to be able to do the one-to-one work and see that, family making progress. There's nothing more rewarding. However, if I'm being, honest, that often feels like a drop in the ocean compared to sort of the bigger issue. And there's just so much more that needs to be done up here, because, again, we can't just focus on just targeting individuals. It needs to be sort of population, public facing approach.
Yeah, which I also think is good in the sense of it takes the pressure off the parents. It's not all on them to solve
Yeah.
this problem.
No, but I think often they feel like it is.
Yeah.
And they get news reports and they hear about studies and they see things. And then, depending on what they're reading and how they're reading it, they feel that there's a huge sense of blame. And, I haven't met a parent yet who isn't trying their best and trying to do the best for their child with the resources and the information that they've got. And I think that's where that kind of education, clear messaging, and unifying work across the industry would be beneficial so that parents aren't having to navigate that, on their own.
Hmm. Definitely. So coming on to a bit of industry and the role of convenience foods and ultra processed foods, hot topic. Laurie and Lara, I wondered if you could talk a bit about why you think these types of foods are so prevalent and what impact this is having.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start if that's all right. I think we all agreed and echoing a lot of what Lucy said. I think the convenience food and ultra processed foods is becoming more and more prevalent because we are so time poor as well. I think those of us that are mothers, parents, whatever, we are juggling so much. We're working full time. We're looking after small children, and we can't do it all. It's a really delicate balancing act, and it's not like you were saying, Lucy, it's not through lack of trying, it's not through laziness, it's not any of that. Parents are doing their best and they are trying to make the right choices, but there is so much clever marketing out there that and even working in the food industry, I can buy something like, oh, this is great, and I get home, I'm like, oh no, this is awful, like the ingredients are terrible, but you do get sort of fooled into it. But there are some great brands, Collective and in Wild and Freddie's Farm, that I think that are making big strides in bridging the gap between nutrition and convenience. And
Mhm.
that's sort of where we've kind of got to look at that. We should all be making everything from scratch, all the time, but it's not possible. We can't all do that, and we can't expect everybody in the UK overnight to never buy a packaged snack ever again, never buy a ready meal ever again. And so I think this is where the role of brands come in to help, like I said, bridge that gap there.
Mm. Yeah, and I'd add to that and say, like, I think one of the ways that we're trying to adapt to this at the moment is to position ourselves as a parent's partner. Like, how can we provide some of those shortcuts, like pasta sauces, for example, that just give parents something really nutritious in their freezer? We've done all of the kind of the thought around the sourcing and creation of that and the slow cooking and nutritional balancing of it. And then all they've got to do is throw on the pasta in a hurry. And so how can we kind of be providing those trustworthy staples that can become a resource to kind of support. But I think it's also really important that there is still this element of cooking at home, and that's why these kind of partner sources are a really lovely way to do that, because even if it's just putting the pasta on or the rice on, there's that element of home cooking at home. And I think it's really important that we're also inspiring children to be interested in food and where it's coming from the kind of origin of the ingredients, but also the cooking practices. And I think as we have become busier than ever, as we've kind of just discussed, something that we're losing is that maybe the desire, or even just obviously time, but maybe the skills and know-how of cooking some of the basics. So I think there's a real educational need there as well. And I mean, I remember when I was at school, we had home economics and we learned how to make some real basic things, and I kind of really enjoyed that independence that it gave me as I grew up. So I think there's a part around how we can support as brands, but also how we can be providing information on kind of recipes and easy to do, quick and approachable things for parents at home too.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And yeah, when I was in school, I did food tech, and that was the only reason I knew about nutrition and wanted to go into the industry. So it's crazy that yeah, a lot of schools don't offer that at the moment, and is something I know a lot of campaigners are pushing for.
Mm.
Okay, so let's talk about some more innovation with Holly. There's lots of trends, as we've talked about, in food and children's nutrition, plant-based, lowering sugar, and natural. Can you talk to us a bit about the sorts of trends that have arisen more recently in children's food, and whether these are particularly different to adult products as well?
Great question. I love trends, Ina. So I I'm gonna have to keep an eye on you, just like shush, Holly, stop. Trying to think about like what are the like key ones, because there's just so much cool stuff going on at the moment. So I think I'll just start with kind of the health stuff, and functional nutrition is absolutely, to your point, what we're seeing across adults. Health trend we're seeing across so many different food and drink categories, but it's really relevant for kids too. So we're seeing so many more products across the board which have those functional benefits. And I think areas like gut health is a big focus area outside of yogurt in particularly. So there are lots of products that are calling out probiotics, prebiotics, and they're really quite sophisticated products for kids. So there's a really lovely Swedish brand, for example, it's called Tiny Sprouts, and they've got these a really lovely range of probiotic like super seed boosters. So they've got hemp seed, flax seed, chia seed. I mean, they're just absolutely perfect for like hiding in porridge, in yogurt, but obviously packed full of incredible benefits. And they've just got a whole different range of boosters which are really focused on the different functional areas that your kiddie might need. So I thought that was a really cool area that we're seeing, and I think that will continue. Post-COVID, those kind of immunity boosting ingredients just spiked and went everywhere. I mean, in yogurt, for example, vitamin D has become a hygiene factor now. I mean, it used to just be calcium, but a lot of the yogurts in the kids category are now fortified with vitamin D as well. And actually, sorry, little plug here, but the collective are doing a really exciting launch next year called Super Spoonies. And we are fortifying little yogurt pots with either acerola cherry, which is for vitamin C, and then we've also got some fiber. And I know you were talking about Lucy, fiber earlier. It's a real kind of focus area for us, linked so directly to gut health and prebiotics and things like that. So we've got a source of fiber range coming out for kiddies as well, to really support their little tummies. So that fiber space is really interesting. But then a particular area that I get so excited about is cognitive function and brain health, because that is really gaining traction. I was really lucky enough to go to the US at the start of this year, which is where all the really cool, crazy stuff is happening. But does give you a feel for what is coming through. And I think nearly every baby food or even toddler food product that I picked up in the supermarket had fortification with choline or omega. And I think parents are becoming really attuned kind of around how food supports overall well-being, and that connection between nutrition and mental health is really growing area of interest. So I think any products that are kind of targeting mood enhancement, stress reduction, we're seeing that hugely across the adult space, but for kids it's really growing as well. And there's an American brand called Brainiacs, which if you're really interested in this space, Little Brainiacs is a really cool kind of pouch product to keep an eye on as well. So yeah, that functional nutritional space is very exciting. And then sort of linked to that, age specific nutrition is kind of an area to keep an eye on. So products, tailored to different developmental stage. And I'm talking beyond baby food here, because I think there's real scope for those kind of more targeted solutions for like toddlers, preschoolers, school age children, because they all have such varying nutritional needs. So that's definitely an area of focus. And we're seeing certain products also come in that are sort of really focusing on sensory exposure, and using culinary kind of creative playing and eating. So anything a lot of MPD in the snacking space, which is having those sort of like brain stimulating elements like cards, games, puzzles. In the US, there are lots of brands using AR, for example, to kind of stimulate cognitive function whilst eating, but also kind of back to the point that so many people have talked about here around educating as well, around what's in their food and kind of bringing it to life for kiddies. And then I just got two more, which I'll just really briefly touch on, and we've talked about it, but on the go convenience, we can't get away from it. To Laurie's point, we're all just so busy. So that demand for healthy portable snacks, meals, it's not going anywhere. We've had a range of yogurt pouches in the market for years now, but that pouch format is just going from strength to strength outside of baby food. kids snack bars are growing, single serve fruit, hopefully more vegetable packets are coming forward as well. So that format is just exploding, kind of for on the go convenience. And, you know, kids love snacks, right? I have a toddler that's her favorite word. And then finally, I think we have to just be really mindful of that kind of regenerative sustainability space as well. Obviously, so many brands now are really mindful of the impact that they're having on the planet. And as parents, we're really conscious of the world that our children are, you know, going to be growing up in. So I think brands are really tapping into that as well. So, you know, regenerative farming, you know, particularly in the US, grass-fed milk and all the benefits that grass-fed milk can have. Those are sort of claims and the trends areas that are coming through as well in that kind of sustainability area. Sorry, that was a whistle stop.
No, that was amazing. Expert
Get so
on
excited.
nutrition trends.
Love trends.
That's great. Well, do you think, obviously there's loads of trends there. Is there anywhere that you feel is lacking in innovation in terms of children's food and
Yeah, I
nutrition?
think the plant-based nutrition space is quite interesting because allergen awareness ever present, a growing area. I don't know the stats. I'm sure, you know, for example, Lucy, you do, but I know that's really still very, very important. So I think plant-based nutrition, plant-based as a category, it is growing, not at the rate that everyone thought it would, but it is important still for that free from category. So actually, I think there's a lack of well-rounded options which kind of have adequate protein, because that's a really, you know, hard thing to crack in that space, healthy fats, and then some of the micronutrients. So I think we need to see a little bit more NPD kind of focused on natural, plant-based, simple ingredients. Even out in the kind of more restaurant space, actually, for example, and on food menus, you know, having more plant-based options or you know, vegetable packed options for kiddies. It, you know, still feels quite meat heavy on, you know, menus, for example. And then I mentioned it earlier, but I think definitely, you know, seeing those age specific nutrition NPD products. So, you know, I think school children, teens, you know, we've seen so much baby food and toddler food, but I think, you know, teenagers is a really interesting area, and it's definitely an area that we're looking at as well, because that age group, sort of post 9 in particular, they start to, or even between 5 and 9, sort of drop out of yogurt completely. You know, the pouch is not cool anymore, and yogurt is so good for children, you know, all those other benefits. So we're trying to think about how do we keep kind of, you know, the school group, the teenagers eating yogurt. So yeah, sort of targeted solutions for certain age groups is quite interesting. And then I don't want to go on about it too much, and it's sort of coming into conversation here, but I think we've got to really focus on innovating in reducing kind of those kind of ultra processed foods and certain ingredients, so which are really targeted for children. Sometimes I pick up a kiddie's product and to Laurie's point, I'm like, I cannot believe that it's got those ingredients in it. So we really need to, I think, see more innovation in that space. Like, do those ingredients really need to be there? And then my final one is healthy indulgence, because indulgence, we're seeing indulgence across as a trend across food and drink still, you know, comfort food. You know, it's a challenging world we live in at times. We're all really very stressed, and we're definitely turning to food in terms of crisis. And actually, parents want to treat their kids occasionally. It's okay, and they shouldn't feel guilty about that. So I think having kind of healthier, better for you indulgence options for kiddies as well is a really interesting space as well that maybe certain brands could tap into and do a lot better.
Loads of really interesting insights there. Thank you. So talking of things that brands can be doing, let's discuss some of the really exciting innovations that you guys are a part of. So Lara, could you share some ways that Lune and Wild's products address some of these barriers that we're talking about? I know there's so much variety in what you offer. So yeah, how you sort of are addressing these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for anyone who doesn't know, Lune and Wild is available as a sort of direct consumer channel. So you can go onto our website and buy our meals that way. We also do nursery catering, which is where we realize that most children are consuming their calories in a week. And so to have a maximum impact on their overall nutrition, being able to make a difference in those settings is also really important to what we do. I think we're lucky though on the direct consumer side that it gives us this direct communication and relationship with our customer, who is the parent, and to really understand the problems and ensure that our products are directly speaking to a solution for them. When we kind of created our concept, what we really wanted to do was make the homemade food that on a perfect day with all the right ingredients and all the time in the world, mum and dad might make at home. And so our ingredients that we use are all completely natural and organic, nothing that wouldn't be in your cupboard at home. And we choose to freeze our products because this means that we don't need to be adding any preservatives or high fruit levels. And we said from the start, we're never going to put fruit into a savory meal. And it was something that I couldn't understand at first, looking at all of the pouches in the supermarket and thinking, is there a reason that there has to be? And I believe with kind of pH levels and preserving, there is, but frozen allows us to kind of get away from that. So our meals are all made to be like mum and dad would enjoy to sit down and eat themselves, but without any of the seasoning. We don't put any salt in or sugar in our meals. So I think the frozen sort of format allows us to just to be really true to those values. Really, just all we aim to do is use the best quality ingredients, gentle cooking practices, and we blast freeze everything so that we're retaining the nutrients. And I think that retail is a different space at the moment, and it's hopefully changing. Holly and I were discussing this the other day. There's some definite moves amongst the kind of the way that supermarkets are laying out their products and starting to bring freezers into ambient aisles or chilled aisles, which is really exciting. I think it's been a really difficult space for certainly a frozen product to cut through when the baby R really does just exist in one quite sort of static space in the supermarket, which has really lacked innovation. I think that's me.
That's brilliant. No, thank you. And yeah, I think it's really, really interesting what you're doing in changing the sort of perception of frozen food to the average consumer. So thank you. Laurie, with Freddie's Farm Snacks, I know you've got the fruit bars and snack bites using just like whole foods and natural ingredients, and you've also got the paper packaging speaking to that sustainability trend. What's next for you, and how are you sort of planning to continue evolving what you're offering?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we always want to stay true to our principles of only using whole ingredients. And I think a lot of brands are guilty of things like, we use real fruit. You're like, well, what does that mean? You're using purees and concentrates and horrible. Whereas we've developed a patented process by using fresh fruits and vegetables that are, in layman's terms, it's all roughly grated. It then settles, we remove any fruit juice that comes out of that to reduce the sugar content further, and then we slowly dehydrate everything. So there's this whole argument around free sugars as well. So we're keeping those to a minimum, which is really important. So we want to stay true to sort of our principles, and also the sustainability element is very, very important, as everything is packed into curbside recyclable paper packaging, and that is something that we're very keen on. Ours is tapping into what Holly was saying about age ranges. Our kind of future MPD is in sort of two different areas. We want to continue to clean up the sort of baby and toddler snacking aisle, which is just full of horrible things like veggie puffs that have never seen a vegetable in their life. I mean, there's actually more vegetables in our fruit shapes than there are in some brands of veggie puff. And so I think, we want to keep we've got some exciting MPD in the work there. And what we want to do is help parents to continue to support them on the go, but move their palates, their children's palates, towards more natural flavors and natural textures. And I think these diets that are very high in ultra processed foods, kids are not used to these textures, they're not used to these flavors, which is why I think as we get older, we see sort of increased percentages. So I think it's something like 49% of 47% of toddlers get their diet's UPF, which then rises to 59% by the age of 7. And that's only going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. So from one end, we want to target the baby aisle and get them started on proper food earlier, but also look towards the older child and looking at the sort of age-specific things. Freddie himself, I'm Freddie's mum. He's now 9, and we're seeing him. He's great. He's like an absolute poster boy for Freddie's farm and healthy eating, bless him. But we do see a lot of his friends. They're just kind of dropping out these healthier options. There's not cool products for sort of older kids, and I think, and we're seeing that in the statistics, and the percentage of their diet is ultra processed. So we want to look at that as well. I can see, especially when they're playing sport, you're picking them up from school, you've got to get them to a club. They need something that is going to give them the right energy to perform well, but it's not going to ruin their dinner. And so I think there's some really interesting arguments there as well. And again, I think, yeah, like we've all been saying, just get people cooking more as well, and just supporting it, that whole holistic thing. Despite my accent, I'm Italian, and I grew up in an Italian household. And for us, just sitting down together and eating together is a thing of joy, fun into it as well, and be able to have treats and not feel guilty about it when you know you're making the right choices elsewhere.
Yeah, there's so much more to food than just the nutrition, and that's definitely really important to remember. And I think something that you've all mentioned today. So, a final discussion point. We've highlighted obviously the need for bridging that gap of making healthier convenience foods and foods for busy parents. But also things that are affordable and appealing to children's tastes and senses, and also sustainable and competitive in the market. So there's a lot. There's a lot to try and balance there. So I thought maybe if we could each give sort of one top tip or step for brands or individuals in the food industry, or even policymakers, if you want to go that far, that they could do to try and really make a difference in children's nutrition.
I think it's just around the way that we shop. So I think that we could spend a lot of money on the processed foods. So going back to looking at where we're buying our food from, are there local veg markets, for example? You can get some great deals there, and just trying to strip back to whole foods. And I guess it's all that kind of going back to where food comes from and its rawest state. And I think that when we've got good quality produce, something like just a slice of apple or a stick of cucumber in the right season tastes absolutely delicious. And I did a lot of this thinking when first coming up with Lune and Wild, and thinking about my own food memories as a child. And so much of what horrified me when I was younger, I think, and put me off things, was probably eating foods when they were out of season, or they were just I remember having like tomatoes in winter, and they're kind of anemic and pretty disgusting, and it's going to put any child off. But if you give really, really good quality stuff, and you're spending your money on those limited items, but trying to give the best version of it, I think we want to encourage that love for that whole real food. So we're not having to disguise things and put it into a more processed snack form as well.
Amazing.
Probably easier said than done, though.
Yeah, it's always so nice when you go to a hot country and have a tomato and it just tastes completely different.
Exactly.
Holly, do you want to go next then?
Yeah, well, actually, because it's really nice. It's sort of very similar to what Lara's saying, and I'll probably come at it from more of that kind of like innovation, product development, what can the food industry do? I think we really need to kind of rethink our approach to product development, and even like reformulation of products, because all these discussions around ultra processed foods, which are very relevant and live at the moment, are really important. But I think it's probably more important to focus on what really truly matters, and that's where the food comes from, the quality of the ingredients, the quality of the food, and then obviously that goes hand in hand with the nutritional quality of those ingredients. So at the collective, we really encourage my team to really think about the purpose of every ingredient we're putting into that product, and I really do think some of the big players need to start interrogating some of their ingredient decks, particularly when it's like for children, and thinking, does that really need to be in there? That starch, that emulsifier, that preservative. There's so much incredible innovation happening out there. Like listening to you, Laurie, and your paint, it's just so interesting and so exciting. you know, I think sharing that knowledge and all of that research more with one another, because I just think there are just some really lazy products out there that they need to change, because they're just, you know, not good enough for children. So yeah, I think we need to kind of really rethink about our approach. You know, reformulation is going to be a big topic for so many people, you know, with HFSS guidelines out there, and you know, being in the press even just yesterday about the kind of advertising restrictions there. You know, we have had to take sugar out of our products, our fruited products for kids, and we have done that in a what we like to coin as a really like stealth way, a stealth sugar reduction. We've done it for years. We did it even before all the guidelines came out because we knew it was the right thing to do. We didn't need the government to push us. We were already doing it. We were already on that journey, and we did it really slowly, year by year. We took a tiny bit out because it came up earlier, kids' palates needs to change. So we can't just take a whole load out and replace it with a load of like flavorings or whatever to try and get that product tasting nice. But we did it really slowly. We interrogate our process. We look at the quality of our fruit going into the product to get as much flavor. So we've just done it really slowly, and we haven't had any any issues. You know, we're still the fastest growing kids brand. I'll be honest, one year we went too far, and my goodness, did the kiddies tell us, right? We had videos of people, you know, of children saying this strawberry flavor's not the same. We had letters, and I was like, oh my goodness, they're so right. We went too far too quickly, because we were trying to hit a certain retailer's targets. We were like, okay, hold on, backtrack. But you know, we've got to listen to our consumers. We've got to listen to the children out there that are tasting our products. So yeah, I think there's just some more to do in innovation and R&D and development, how we approach that. But for me, as a, you know, product person, that's really exciting.
I think there's lots of lessons as well that parents can take from that. I think it can be so overwhelming, and for a parent that wants to reduce UPF and all of this, there's so much information out there. It can seem so daunting, and you can want to just be like, right, we're swapping everything overnight. But I think we've got to parents have to make small changes that all add up, and it is worth doing, but not to do too much too quickly that the kids don't like it and mealtimes become a struggle and it becomes unpleasant. This is a generational change that needs to happen. It can't happen overnight. And that's where like a lot of our products all come in. And Freddie's Farm got a fresh fruit and veg is what you should be feeding your kids, but we can't get everybody there overnight. They're not going from Haribo to an apple. So it's giving these sort of stepping stones. And I think for parents, small changes that add up. Read the back of the label, start buying more ingredients, and when you need a convenience option, choose a product like Lune Wild, the Collective, Freddie's Farm, that is so much better than the alternatives out there. And your children aren't probably even going to notice, and you'll make this huge benefit to them, to their mental health, to how they concentrate at school, how they perform on the football pitch, with just tiny changes that they might not even notice. And they can do it just slowly and carefully, and everybody will love it.
Yeah, some really nice parallels there in terms of small changes in industry, but also small changes in parenting. Lucy, do you want to add anything to this last?
Everyone's been brilliant. I actually sort of came at it and from a different angle, I suppose, with my dietitian hat on, and I agree completely in terms of ingredient resourcing, really scrutinizing things. I think there's a couple of things that as a clinician, like I wish on behalf of parents more so. The first is sort of more like to support that education piece, like more transparency. Don't make it so cloak and daggers. It's definitely in no discussion about any of the, you know, really wonderful brands here, but so much of that decision making, which is made in a time poor toddler tugging at your trousers or in the trolley, you know, don't make it till parents get home and then go, oh God, actually, what's in this? It should be, they should be able to make a good choice quickly and easily without having the wool sort of pulled over their eyes. So I'm a big fan of transparency around that. And I suppose whilst we're also looking at refining ingredients to, you know, bring children back sort of closer to sort of naturally occurring tastes and textures and things like that, I would also say, given what we know about sort of the nutritional deficiencies at the moment in the country. And like everybody has said, nothing is going to change overnight. Like we're not going to get every child having 5 portions of fruit and veg every day tomorrow. It's not going to happen. So, but if we know, you know, most of the gut, really formative gut microbiome formation is in the sort of first 3 to 5 years of life. And we know fiber is an issue. Can we work on that idea of brands with like nutrition by addition? So I love the idea of like having the fiber in the yogurt. It's like a food that's really like universally consumed in that group at a really key point in their life, which could have such sort of significant effects later on. So, and that's how I often approach discussions with families when they're feeling overwhelmed. Again, that small step change thing comes up again, rather than trying to go A to Z overnight. How can you add something in? How can we work on addition and things, gradually for the kids, but also gradually for the parents, so it doesn't feel so overwhelming that the easiest thing to do is to not do it, right? So it's like, you're like, I'm going to go to the gym 6 times this week, and you're like, why did you set that? God, why don't we set something achievable and manageable? So that I feel like that's quite empowering for parents as well, rather than just feeling sort of blame or self-deprecation and all these big feelings that always come up, and failure, when parents tell me about sort of getting to grips with their kids' eating, nutrition, food choices and things like that. So yeah, it's been a great conversation.
Brilliant. Yeah, it really has. Thank you all so much. We are tight on time, but I'm going to try and do one Q&A question. So let's do, okay, so how can smaller brands compete with these big companies to get more people eating healthier food options? That's
Well,
one for anyone, really.
as a smaller brand, I think
Yeah.
something, for example, like Freddie's Farm can offer that other brands can, and this is tapping very much into what I think everybody is saying, is the kind of the quality and transparency, both with regards to the quality of the ingredients that we use, but both the transparency in the sourcing and production process. And I think parents are becoming increasingly, they're looking for more sort of trustworthy brands and brands that they can sort of stay with. And something that we can do that other brands can't is we can show you every step of the way from plant to packet, how we get there, that a very big company cannot do. And I think that's something that smaller brands can do, tap into, and that really gets the trust of the parents. And it's not about sort of gaining their trust. I mean, it's you're not pulling wool over your eyes. We are being so open, so honest, so transparent, because they're not idiots, and children aren't idiots, and they're not being fooled anymore, hopefully, by all these marketing claims. So let's show them exactly how it's made, and they can make an informed decision. And that's something that the big brands just can't do. Or if they do show you, you would never eat it again.
Yeah, I love that. The transparency is a key differentiator. Does anyone else want to add to that? Or are we?
No, I think I just, yeah, a bit like I was saying before, around having that direct relationship with a customer and really being able to just pick up the phone and find out what's working for them and what's not. And I mean, we always do welcome calls with our customers to find out if they have any questions around weaning or any additional resources that we can provide. And I think that the kind of education piece around weaning and throughout the various stages of childhood, there's so much there that we can support with beyond the food product that we provide. So I think that's a really kind of, yeah, it's a very very core to our business, being able to speak with our customers like that, which we just wouldn't have if we were in the supermarket.
I think my final one as well would be agility. The smaller businesses, we can work so much quicker. We can work so
Yes.
fast. And I talked about some of those trends coming through and some of those really cool ingredients that we could look at adding to certain products. Love what Lucy's saying around nutrition by addition. Things are more available to us as a smaller brand because we can work really quickly in that really like kind of agile approach. So that's how we can win as well.
Yeah, that's so true.
Nice. Very positive ending. Well, thank you all so much. This has been really, really great. So thanks for your time. I hope you found it interesting as well. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.